the mass opposition to the policies of the ruling class, at the level of understanding that people have reached about what's happening in the society. It's the concept of bringing masses into motion, but at all times keeping the movement independent of the ruling class.
Now, what is the best way we can implement this orientation at this point? We follow a general organizational type strategy, which is simply this. You get the issues around which people are moving against the government and create a unified movement around them in order to maximize numbers that will come into motion.
This is the same strategy which was used by a union when it carries out a strike. When a union calls for a strike, it calls it on certain demands: higher pay, better working conditions, whatever the demands happen to be for the struggle. If a majority of the workers agree, they take a vote, and then everybody strikes together, and they put a very heavy emphasis on keeping it together.
The workers don't say, why don't we also take a stand on the Arab-Israeli conflict, or on housing, or on the last bill passed in Congress, as a prerequisite to participate in the strike.
You've got to deal with people where they're at. When a woman comes along and says, I'm against the abortion laws, I want to see them abolished, and she wants to join the demonstration for free abortions on demand, but she still has illusions about the war in Vietnam, still supports Nixon, what is our attitude? Do we say, you're an imperialist pig, don't you know what's happening in Vietnam? You can go on this demonstration, keep away from us, we understand these things, we're the elite, we don't want to change ourselves by letting someone who's for the war in Vietnam join this demonstration.
The way people radicalize. Our concept is to unite people in action around the issues on which they're moving, not because we're single issue fetishists. In fact, our aim, in fact, is to move people around broader and broader issues. But we've got to deal with reality, not with abstractions.
We advocate many things, but we try to put into practice those things that the masses are prepared to. What does it say? But we try to put into practice those things the masses are prepared for. We advocate general strikes, but we don't call them, because we're not fools. We know there cannot be a general strike on any issue right now, given the present level of consciousness. And you won't get to the point where there can be general strike unless you put people into motion. Precisely because when they start to move on any one issue, whether women's liberation, the war on racial oppression, people begin to question the whole society and to see the interrelationship between the different issues. In fact, it's the way people radicalize.
People don't suddenly understand everything at once. Think about your own political development. There's always one issue or another, depending on the objective conditions, which tends to wake a person up. As we've said over and over again, at the present stage, the most effective weapon to stop the ruling class from moving to the right is to get masses of people in motion. The most effective way to do this, at this stage especially, is mass, peaceful, legal demonstrations in the streets.
Now, if we want to build a movement against the Vietnam War, it cannot, by definition, be multi-issue. That's like saying we want a single-issue movement that's multi-issue. The multi-issue anti-war movement is the trick, which is the key to how the liberals and ultra-lefts can get together organizationally, politically, socially, etc., get married and live happily ever after.
The trick is to make the issues non-issues. Make them so nebulous that they have nothing to do with concrete realities. Instead of demonstrating to bring the troops home from Vietnam now, which is very concrete, they call for stop imperialism, nothing like an abstraction. Even Nixon can say, I'm against imperialism too. That's what Britain and France and Holland did in the 18th and 19th centuries. But Nixon can't say, bring all the troops home now.
Or they say, we should raise the demand, end racism. Isn't Nixon willing to say, end racism? Don't black Democratic politicians say, end racism? So they make a real multi-issue program, end racism, end repression, end imperialism, end male chauvinism.
What we want is to call for concrete demands and mobilize people to win them. Demands like get out of Vietnam, or black control of the black schools, or concrete campaigns around specific cases of repression. But that's not what the liberal ultra-lefts do. What they call a multi-issue program is a list of abstract reforms.
Slogans like end racism and end male chauvinism are not only abstract in their political meaning, they are also abstract because the anti-war movements did not organize the struggle to win them. The anti-war movements cannot replace or substitute for an independent black liberation movement or an independent women's liberation movement, for instance. Black people and women, not the anti-war movement, must decide which concrete demands will best further their struggle and how best to organize around them.
Many students may agree with the slogan "End Racism," but how many of them understand the right of Black people to self-determination, the need for an independent Black political party, and the demand for Black control of the Black community? PLSDS, for instance, screams, "Smash racism, I mean screams," while they oppose Black nationalism, an independent Black party, Black studies programs, Black control of the Black community, open admissions, etc.
The fact that many radicals do not understand Black nationalism is evident in the expectation that if the anti-war movement adopts the slogan, "End Racism," then Black people will immediately begin to join the movement. Black people are going to be drawn to Black organizations building a Black leadership and formulating a program for their liberation struggle.
If you have a program of a lot of reforms and abstractions, it means that you can go right back to the liberal wing of the ruling class, because that is just what their program is also. You can go right back to Senator Kennedy, who can get up, as he did in his speech accepting the Democratic Party nomination for Massachusetts Senator, and come out against racism, repression, poverty, and many other things.
This is precisely the orientation of the Communist Party. Get the anti-war movement to approve an abstract program which will be just like the programs of the peace politicians. Then there will be no problem in getting the anti-war movement to support these good Democrats.
If you look back to 1966 and 1968, you'll notice that every election year, the anti-war coalition split. Multi-issue groups were formed that ended up supporting the Democrats, and the demonstrations got smaller.
Now we're going through the same process once again, but within a different context. The great difference is that the depth of the anti-war movement is qualitatively greater than it was in 66 or 68. Deep mass anti-war sentiment exists, and it offers the possibilities, even during an election period, of building mass independent actions against the war, and therefore actually holding back the war effort.
What's happening right now is that the involvement of people in mass actions is radicalizing them on other issues as well. The anti-war movement, for example, has helped lay the basis for the tremendous growth of the women's liberation movement, and it has created a great responsiveness to certain aspects of the Black struggle. The Black struggle itself helps to inspire the anti-war movement.
A good example of this process was during the May Strike movement. Many students who helped build the anti-war universities became really aware for the first time the repression against the Black Panthers and raised concrete demands to free the jailed Panthers.
At the University of California, Berkeley, during the strike, a mass meeting of 12,000 voted to set up a child care center on campus and to institute a women's studies program. Many campuses adopted and attempted to institute concrete demands raised by the Black students. All types of radicalization took place within the context of the strikes.
Just think of the strike situation. When there is a strike for higher wages where a big struggle takes place, masses come into motion and people begin to question all types of things. What's the response among the workers after a single issue strike? To someone who says, look, none of the Democrats and Republicans supported our strike, yet we voted for them last year.
5 more paragraphs. Obviously, in the context of struggle, many possibilities for radicalization open up. And who is going to the masses with a concrete program of action around all these issues? The YSA and SWP. Who is pushing an independent mass Black political party? Who is helping build a Chicano party? Who is building the women's liberation movement? What other organization is working in all these fields with the aim of mobilizing masses and struggle against the ruling class?
Our Socialist Workers' Party election campaigns are going to be very much a part of this whole radicalization, and especially of the anti-war movement. The alternatives we create through our socialist election campaigns are going to be part of the anti-war movement, a part of the whole context in which the anti-war struggle is taking place.
So, we have to launch an offensive. The Socialist Workers' Party candidates are going to get a bigger hearing than ever before because there are now tens of thousands of young people who are looking for anti-war candidates. Many of them, it's true, will support peace candidates from the Democratic or Republican Party, but with a certain fear and suspicion. Many young people will start out supporting a Democratic Party candidate, and when their candidate makes one slip and takes a bad position, they'll quit the campaign and be ready to turn to socialist candidates.
In our election campaigns, we've got to emphasize that it's not the individual candidate that is decisive, but his or her party and which social layer the party serves. That is the real question. Which social layer, which class rules? And the Socialist Worker Party campaign will be saying clearly, don't vote for the parties of war. We in the SWP, our program, not the Democrats, represents the interests of the masses of the people.
Our campaigns speak for the full program necessary to mobilize people and struggle to do away with war, poverty, racial oppression, and the oppression of women. They point the way to the goal of our struggle, socialism.
But at the same time, we will unite on any issue around which people are willing to struggle against the ruling class, no matter what their level of understanding of this society. This is the way to move masses in this country, to build a revolutionary party, and not only play, but make a revolution.
And that's the speech, once again, by Peter Camejo, called Liberalism, Ultraleftism, or Mass Action from 1970. I hope you reflected on what resonated with you, what you agreed with, did not agree with, and if anyone has any reflections that they want to add to this speech. Otherwise, whoever would like to take the mic next can take the mic next.
Thank you.